Welcome to the Ricecast. I'm your host, Dan Pigsley. Sitting across from me is my friend and yours, Pastor Willy Rice. Pastor, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
AC still out. It's all right. It's hot. So, Pastor, it's been a great week. You know, we had this past Sunday, we did the Membership Sunday, which was so fun to see, so fun to just be a part of. But I want to just take 10 minutes this week because I know we've got a lot going on. And I would love to for you to catch us up on something that happened this summer at the Southern Baptist Convention. You made a motion about the ERLC. Can you catch us up on that? Tell us what that is first.
Yeah, and I think we did a podcast a couple of weeks ago on the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention. So I know it's kind of a nerd niche discussion, and there are people probably listening to this go, what are they talking about? Well, you can go ahead and tune out and go listen to the news or something. But we have had some people say, okay, what's the latest on that? Again, this was a kind of an ongoing thing. I made the motion this year, but it had been made by a friend of mine last year to abolish the ERLC. And we made it very clear, and again, people can go back and listen to the conversation, that the whole point was to reform the ERLC because Southern Baptist required it happening 2 years. So a motion to abolish, if it had passed, would simply be like putting you on a clock. You know, hey, we got to make some reforms here. The vast majority of people don't want it to be abolished. Now, there are probably some people think we could live without it, and maybe we could. But most people kind of feel like, hey, there's a valuable role there to have somebody speaking into current ethical issues and also even advocating for us in Washington public affairs regarding religious liberty. So the motion to abolish wasn't because we don't think the work is important. The motion to abolish was because the ERLC over the last decade had become a real lightning rod in the Southern Baptist Convention. And, we talked about that at length. You know, just to recap, I felt like they weren't really representing who most Southern Baptists were. I felt like they were on the left side of the spectrum in terms of political, cultural affairs. A lot of the positions had alienated them from what I think are rank-and-file Southern Baptists, and there was a lot there. We talked about that. And so we made a motion this summer to that effect. The motion did not pass, but it was defeated 57% to 43% by a ballot vote. That was a pretty significant no vote. 43% of the Southern Baptist Convention said yes to abolish the ERLC, and that got everybody's attention.
So that happened in June this past summer, where you made that. I think you did a great job. I was there, and then since then we're sitting in August, September now. What's happened in the ERLC since that June meeting?
Well, everybody kind of wondered what was going to happen. Was there going to be a big change? Could you ignore 43%? And out of the gate, maybe people were thinking, hey, they're just going to try to hunker down and talk about how they won, which is kind of what they had done last year, which was, I think, a great mistake. And I said so. I think when you have – last year we didn't know the percentage. It was just a ballot vote, which if you've never been, it means you hold your ballot in the air. You're looking at 10,000 people, and you kind of guess where the number is. And it was a guess of about 60 to 40. I would have thought, man, you walk out of there with your hair on fire and say, hey, we got to make some changes. And I felt like instead they kind of went into a defensive posture, which was the exact opposite of what needed to happen. This year, people were wondering, was it going to make any difference? Now it's a ballot vote, 43%. But I can tell you this. And this is the reason we did it. I knew it was an uphill climb to get 51%. The outcome didn't surprise me. I kind of put it at 45% where it would be. But out of the gate, there were a lot of calls. I received calls from some people. I received some calls from people on the trustee board of the ERLC. I received calls from people who voted against the motion, but they were very concerned about how that vote went down and what could we do to address this. So we had a lot of conversations, and I know if people are calling me, they're calling each other. A couple of weeks ago, Dr. Brent Leatherwood, who is the president of the ERLC, resigned. And obviously, everyone can kind of connect the dots, but he was resigning in wake of that vote. Pretty much everybody realized that. I don't know Dr. Leatherwood, and I'm always reticent to kind of talk about somebody here. I don't know him. I am sure personally he is a wonderful man. I have no acrimony toward him. I hope none toward me. I've never met him. I know most of the other entity heads. I've had conversations with him, just about all of them, I think. But I certainly don't think I've ever had a conversation with Dr. Leatherwood. And he's probably a wonderful father and a wonderful husband and a follower of Christ. And if we were to sit down and just talk about the Lord, we'd probably have a whole lot in common. But he resigned, and I think most people across the convention, without any kind of personal acrimony at all, felt like that was probably a positive step, that there needed to be a redirection. I wasn't ever saying it publicly. I never said anything about his leadership personally, publicly. I just was talking about the direction of the ERLC. And the need to change and the need to kind of have a better posture toward rank and file Southern Baptists. But he did resign, and I think most people think, and they're probably right, that was in the wake of that vote in June.
Well, you said something earlier. You said the ERLC had become a lightning rod. What did you mean by that?
Well, under his predecessor, and this is getting into names, but everybody knows this, under his predecessor, Russell Moore, Dr. Moore became a real lightning rod. And again, Dr. Moore, somebody I'd known in the past and liked and had friendly conversations with. As I've shared before, I had him preach when I was the president of the Pastors Conference. Dr. Moore was one of the first. He had just become, seems like, the president of the ERLC then. And, man, I really appreciated his voice. And I thought, man, this is a strong, convictional, conservative guy speaking in a new generation. But and I love to hear him preach. We had him here at Calvary. Some people remember back about 10 years ago. But not long after that, it just became a lightning rod. He began to make some very controversial statements. It was clear that culturally and politically, he wasn't where most Southern Baptists were. And I think rather than coming across of trying to bridge a gap, it was more almost of a condescending kind of tone, looking down on Southern Baptists. And the problem really that Dr. Leatherwood had, in my opinion, respectfully, was it was just kind of a continuation of Dr. Moore's reign. It was kind of like Dr. Moore 2.0, really. And that just didn't work. The ERLC needed a radical redirection. So when I say a lightning rod, I think it's just taking some positions that were outside the program, really, outside things Southern Baptists had clearly articulated, a couple of stances that I wondered why they were there. Some cases just really in contradiction to a lot of things Southern Baptists were about, and just some unnecessary stances. And so over the last 10 years, anybody that's followed the Southern Baptist Convention closely knows that the ERLC has been a lightning rod. It has just been that. It has been a point of contention and controversy, more so than any other entity. And so something needed to happen there.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that because, some of our listeners, like you said at the beginning, it's like they have no idea what we're talking about. So I hope that clears that up for him. So now you have, Dr. Leatherwood has stepped aside. Now the ERLC, I'm assuming he's running just with no president. They're kind of searching.
They have an interim
now.
president of staff, which is kind of like what you would think. So usually what happens in an organization there is just kind of, okay, stay in the middle of the road. Don't get, too wild or crazy. Just like a church. If you're in an interim pastor, there's not time to start some big new program or launch some big initiative. It's, okay, just keep everything running. And, so we have some lobbyists in Washington and, materials they're printing, whatever it is they're doing. And I'm sure there's some good things they're doing. But everyone is now going to watch and see what the search committee of that board is going to do. And who are they going to appoint as a new president? Are they going to take a different route? Are they going to try to be in the same vein? And I think everybody's watching, and I don't think we're going to get an answer to that anytime soon. I think somebody said they might intentionally wait until next summer, almost as a way of getting on the other side of the convention and not letting – there's a lot of fervor leading up to a convention. So sometimes you want to get on the other side of it when people aren't paying attention so much. But on the other hand, it could be a big win for them if they get somebody that can really unite Southern Baptists, speak for Southern Baptists. I said this in my speech. The ERLC should be a mouthpiece for the Southern Baptist Convention to speak to the watching world. And instead, it had become to some degree a conduit for the watching world to lecture us. And that's the way it felt. I'll tell you, that's the way it felt to me, and I don't think I was alone in that. Obviously, 43% voted to abolish it. I was probably one of the last ones to get there. You know, I wasn't one of these guys that's been out there criticizing them. I defended them for years. So anyway, I think what we'll see is they'll have a search committee that's been named. They will review candidates. There's not a lot of people who probably are qualified for this kind of a job, but they'll look at it and make a recommendation, and that will give us a real good indication of where they're going in the next few years. Hopefully, they'll make a good choice that'll unite the convention and not continue to be a divisive influence.
I would just ask, if you were on that committee, what would you say would be the qualifications for someone that sits in that position?
I think we need somebody who can really, first of all, relate to churches. I don't know that president has to be a pastor, but most of our entities have been led by pastors. And here's the reality. Most of your interaction is going to be with pastors and church leaders. So if you're not a pastor, you sure need to know how to speak to pastors.
Yeah.
You need to know how to show up and speak to pastors at their conventions, at their associations, at their meetings, privately and in publicly. So if you can have somebody who really understands pastors, that's a big thing. You've got to have that voice. And you either have it or you don't. It just comes from life experiences. And I think we need that. So you look at the last, couple, we've had kind of theologian, and then we had somebody who had been in politics, actually. We need somebody who really gets average pastors, rank and file pastors. You need somebody well-credentialed. They need to be well-educated, probably a PhD. I hate to say that's an absolutist, but my guess is that committee will say that. Sure. You certainly need somebody who's well-qualified educationally. That's going to command the respect of the people you talk to and deal with, and that's important. I think you need somebody who is an ethicist, somebody who is trained and is thinking about ethical issues, but is unapologetically, unwaveringly committed to biblical conviction, scriptural conviction, in terms of the pressing moral issues of the day. We're not looking for somebody that's just a political flamethrower, bombastic personality. I'm not saying that, but we need somebody who is unapologetic in terms of they stand on biblical principles and are willing to represent Southern Baptists in speaking those principles to a watching world.
That's good. And, sometimes when an entity sits down, obviously it didn't happen between Dr. Moore and Dr. Leatherwood, but sometimes you see a pendulum swing like all the way to the other side. Do you think that'd be a positive or a negative thing?
Well, given the sides, probably positive, actually. Yeah. I'd like to see it swing a good bit in the other direction. I'll say probably mostly positive. I know, when you talk about pendulums and directions, there's probably extremist tendencies on both sides of that. Yeah. And certainly we don't want somebody who is, is not aware of the breadth of Southern Baptist family and so forth. But we do need somebody who is unapologetically on the other side in terms of convictional truth and representing Southern Baptists. They might not appear to be that different in terms of their personal convictional stance. I'm not saying the ERLC has been pro-LGBTQ or pro like a left-wing advocate. But what I'm saying is they were soft on too many things, and they gave kind of an uncertain sound on certain things, and they chased after certain issues that tend to be more, the people on the left, kind of moderate left side, tend to be more in love with and more enamored about in terms of conversations about immigration debates and gun control and some of those things. We just need somebody who is on the other side of that spectrum and mainly understands who Southern Baptists are. Southern Baptists articulate through resolutions year in and year out kind of where they stand on these issues. And they serve as a really good guide for the positions the ERLC should take and advocate for. And if you get outside of those and you start just picking your own pet issues, that's a mistake. And if you start aligning with these other groups, and that's kind of what happened, I think, in the ERLC. They started aligning with some of these interdenominational groups. They started getting funding from some kind of questionable sources. That's really what that's really what sent me over the edge. When I saw the documentation of where they had been taking money from non-SBC sources, that to me is unconscionable. That just to me is a bright line. As an SBC entity, you do not cross. You should work for Southern Baptists, especially the ERLC. You're representing Southern Baptists. Because when people start giving you checks, you better look out where that's coming from. And it's when it's political advocacy groups, they're not giving you money because they like your hairdo. They're giving you money because they want to influence you.
Right.
In some cases, they just want to soften your opposition. They want to move you a couple of degrees. Southern Baptists are the largest Protestant denomination in America. And I understand some people have Baptist life, it's kind of another nerd niche conversation about the term denomination. I am aware of that. But what most people think of as a denomination is what Southern Baptists are. And it's been historically that largest Protestant group, conservative, biblical, and so there are a lot of left-wing advocacy groups can think if we can just neuter their voice, like we're not going to switch them to the other side, but if we can just soften their voice, if we can just mitigate their voice, that's a big win for us. So when you start taking checks from other people, that's a big problem.
It's huge, and you mentioned that at the convention that last year. You've mentioned a couple of podcasts as well, and I think it's a fair point. I do want to go back like 3 or 4 steps. You did say something I hadn't heard yet, that they're thinking about waiting until the convention this coming year.
I have no inside information on that.
Sure.
I've heard people say that might be. First of all, these things take months sometimes.
Sure.
So it would not be strange to think that this is going to be a 9-month, 12-month process. And somebody speculated, and I thought, it would be kind of a shrewd move, at least if you think it's going to be controversial, to wait until after the convention.
Which would be crazy because this is a presidential, like we're going to be voting for a new president this year as well. So that's a lot. That's a lot on the table for Orlando.
It is.
So,
but honestly, you'd love to get a new guy in there, and you'd love to present him at. That's really what they ought to do. And if I were them, I would say, man, we hope by next convention to have our guy, because we want him to stand up there, and we don't want a guy we're trying to hide. Right? You don't want that. That's not going to turn out well. They should already know that's not going to turn out well. So they should want a guy that they're like, okay, this is our guy, new day, new direction, and if you can do that, and then he comes to the convention and he does a great job and shakes hands, and people go, wow, okay, this is a new day for the ERLC. That should be what the ERLC wants. So hopefully, really, that's what they do.
I love that. Well, again, just kind of, I want to put a bow on this really quick. You said, the new guy, he has to be someone who connects with pastors, connects with, and knows how to have those conversations. Over the next year, where do you want, and again, they're not going to move a ton because they're still looking for that new president, but how can they succeed over the next year? How can they win back the heart of that Billy Baptist out there?
Yeah, we are living in a day in which, the whole rainbow agenda has, swamped us. And I realize there's a cultural moment where that's being mitigated to some degree, particularly because, as we've talked about, the transgender part of that LGBTQ alphabet, it goes on and on. That T really almost feels like it's overreached, that there are a lot of people looking at that going, wait, men competing in women's sports, you don't have to hold a biblical Christian view to go, that's nuts. That doesn't make any sense. So there does seem to be, a little bit of a reaction that maybe it was an overreach. The ERLC needs to be on the forefront of that. Like, we need an ERLC that should have been the loudest and first voice speaking about how harmful the transgender movement is to everyone, but especially to children. It's harmful to everyone, but especially targeting children. And yet, you'd hear a little bit here and there, but, they would want to talk about other things more than that. And this is a pressing issue. This is where our people live. And I'm not just talking about, grab the issue of the day to win points. I'm saying this is where our people live. They're going to work. They're going to school. They're reading books, and they understand that biblical moral truth is under a complete assault from the ideology of the age. The ERLC needs to be an effective voice to equip our people in knowing how to respond to these challenges and then speaking publicly to these challenges so that we would say, hey, they're saying what needs to be said. They're putting out the resources that need to be put out. And they've put out some resources. I'm not saying that they haven't, but they need to be known for that, kind of that voice for biblical Christian values in the cultural sphere. I think there's a huge change that's going to have to be in what I would call political engagement. For about a decade, the voice from Southern Baptist establishment and SBC elite was basically disengagement. It was a kind of pietism, if you will, that said that in order to be missionally effective, we need to withdraw from they disparagingly called it the culture warring. And that sounded good to a lot of young people. Okay, quit culture warring and let's go, be gospel-centered. Let's go preach the gospel. Let's, get on mission. Well, that sounds good, but even the way you're labeling that is unfair. Like culture warring, that sounds bad. War, bad. Gospel engagement, that sounds good. But the reality is these two things are not mutually exclusive. Warring, what do you mean there? I think cultural engagement means you're willing to speak on issues. You are encouraging your people to speak on issues. We don't withdraw from the cultural political process. We understand that's not the final end game, the be-all, end-all. We understand the kingdom of God is bigger than that, and the gospel movement is global and worldwide and eternal. We understand all that. But we've talked about this. We care about our home. We care about our country. We care about our government. And I think for the last, decade or so, the real bent in Southern Baptist life was, hey, let's disengage from this. And it went under a lot of headings like the gospel-centered movement and that sounds really good until you dig down and see what they were really saying was, hey, stick to your church work and don't have political opinions and don't talk about anything that's offensive. Now, again, I know people can say things in an offensive way and in an arrogant way. That's not what we're advocating. But what we realize, that whole strategy failed for two reasons. First of all, it wasn't all that missionally effective. It really wasn't. A lot of people are today wanting to know, what do you believe? You know this. What do you believe today? Stand up on your hind legs, clear your throat, quit beating around the bush, and tell me, is this right or is this wrong? And tell me why. So this idea of we're going to soft pedal the gospel and the moral truth of the gospel to be missionally effective, no one's impressed. 0 people are impressed. Like, I think I'll go to that church because I don't know what they believe. No, that's not what's happening. So first of all, it wasn't that effective. And secondly, all it did is it led to a withdrawal. Actually, statistics reveal that what you might call conservative, labels are always imperfect, but what you might call conservative evangelicals, Bible-believing Christians, are some of the least politically active people in the whole country. The most politically active are usually people who have a very left-wing view in their religious groups. They're very active politically. So all that happened was people were taught, hey, to be quiet, don't say anything. And meanwhile, you're watching this culture rush over the cliff. You're watching children get harmed. Schools get ruined. And so we've seen that play for about a decade. We've heard that play for about a decade. And now we need to shift back. And so what I would say is I would love to see an ERLC who once again teaches Baptists how to have a robust, fully involved engagement in cultural and political affairs. Not that that's going to be our primary focus, but that we don't shy away from that. We equip our people to be involved. Local school boards, city council, state council. Make a difference. Stand up. Talk about things that are right and wrong and contend for that. That's what loving your neighbor requires. You want to live in a good neighborhood, don't you? I want to live in a good neighborhood. You want your neighbors to be safe. You want them to have good schools. We want to live in a state that's good. So if you care about your communities, you want our communities to be strong and healthy. So I think leading the way in a more robust, aggressive political engagement. That would be a good thing for the ERLC to do.
An equipping ministry of the SBC.
Equipping ministry, yes.
I love that idea. Pastor. Well, Pastor, I appreciate just your time today. We could sit here for hours and unpack these things, and which is a fun thing. We'll probably do that in the near future. Just talk a little bit more SBC stuff. But right now, just want to say, like, it's awesome to be able to hear your heartbeat behind these things, because you're not coming at it from I want to blow everything up. No, like, I just want to help set the direction. I think that's so important for a voice like yours to be heard, especially for our people, that you are so actively involved in these things. I think it's very important. And it's seen. I mean, we talked about this at the Deacon Summit a few weeks ago. We have people that are serving on school boards here at Calvary. We have people that are serving in City Commission. We talked about the what happened with the Save the Garden initiative. A lot of that was like Calvary people. So our people are involved. Our people are being equipped. We just want to see that across the board for the SBC. So I think that's a good word from you, Pastor. Any final words for this week?
No, I think it's good. We love our Southern Baptist family, but there are a lot of issues to be talking about, and I'm sure as we lead up to next June, there'll be we'll do a couple podcasts on that, and I know that's not going to interest everybody, but there are other people out there. They seem to be interested when we talk about it, so we'll try to put some content out there.
Pastor, you have a great week. I'm excited for this weekend, and we'll just love you guys for listening. Know that you've been praying for often, and that we will talk to you next week here on the Ricecast. Have a great one.